Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We love to dig into the really fascinating corners of history, and today we're going way back, like way, way back
Yeah.
to ancient Sumer.
One of the earliest civilizations we know of.
Exactly. And you know what blows my mind? They accomplished so much. We're talking writing,
Mm.
the wheel complex cities, all before 3000 BC. It's incredible.
It really is, and it makes you wonder how much we still don't know about them.
That's what we're here to explore. Because despite all the amazing things we've learned about Sumer, there are still so many mysteries that leave archaeologists scratching their heads.
Mysteries that make you question what we think we know about the past.
Absolutely. So today we're diving into five of the biggest Sumerian head scratchers that have baffled experts for centuries. We'll be looking at, well, first, the mystery of their origins.
Where did they come from? It's a question that has puzzled scholars for a long time.
It really is. And we'll also be tackling a very strange marking on a statue that has sparked some truly wild theories.
A marking that just doesn't seem to fit with our understanding of ancient technology.
Then we'll delve into the myth of a fishman who supposedly brought knowledge to humanity.
A being known as Oannes, a figure who blurs the lines between myth and history.
It's a story that's both fascinating and perplexing, and we'll also be exploring tales of a devastating flood that eerily mirrors stories from cultures around the world.
The flood myth is a universal theme, but the Sumerian version has some unique twists that make it particularly intriguing.
And finally, we'll be looking at the possibility that their towering ziggurats, those massive stepped pyramids, might have been more than just temples.
Some researchers believe they may have been designed to harness energy in ways we're only beginning to understand.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Where did the Sumerians come from? They just seem to appear in Mesopotamia around 3100 BC with this incredible advanced culture. It's like they came out of nowhere.
Well, not quite out of nowhere, but their arrival is definitely sudden, and it's made even more perplexing by their language. Sumerian is what we call a language isolate, meaning it has no clear relationship to any other known language family.
So no linguistic cousins, no long-lost relatives.
Not that we've been able to find, which is really strange when you consider how interconnected the ancient world already was.
So could they have migrated from a region so remote that their language and culture remained completely isolated?
It's possible. But if that's the case, we haven't found any trace of a Proto-Sumerian culture anywhere else.
Hmm. Okay, so what's the other theory?
Well, some believe they developed in isolation right there in Mesopotamia.
But how could they have made such groundbreaking advancements without any outside influence? It seems almost impossible.
It does seem unlikely, but it's not entirely out of the question. We have to remember that our understanding of the past is constantly evolving. New discoveries are always being made.
Okay, so maybe they weren't completely isolated. Perhaps they interacted with other cultures, adopted and adapted ideas, while still maintaining their unique linguistic and cultural identity.
That's a possibility. And it would explain how they were able to advance so rapidly. The Sumerians weren't averse to borrowing and improving upon ideas from their neighbors. In fact, their openness to innovation might be one of the keys to their success.
Yeah, I can see that. But even if they weren't completely isolated, their distinct language and their sudden rise to prominence are still major puzzles.
They are, and they're puzzles that continue to fascinate researchers today.
Okay, so their origin story is a big question mark. But let's move on to a mystery that's even more bizarre. The infamous shot on the statue of Lagash. Picture this. Archaeologists are excavating the ruins of Lagash, a powerful Sumerian city-state. And they uncover this incredible diorite statue, likely of Gudea, a ruler from around 2100 BC.
A masterpiece of ancient art.
Yeah, except for one peculiar detail, a small round indentation.
An indentation that looks an awful lot like a bullet hole.
Right, and that's what makes it so strange.
We're talking
Thousands of years before firearms were even a concept.
It's an anomaly that has baffled experts since it was discovered in the late 19th century.
So if it is a bullet hole, what does that mean?
Well, it would mean that our understanding of ancient technology is completely wrong.
It would rewrite history.
Exactly. But of course, there are more conventional explanations.
Like that.
Well, some believe it could be damage inflicted during a battle, maybe a stray arrow or something.
Ah, okay, makes sense. But wouldn't that leave a different kind of mark? This looks so precise.
That's what makes it so intriguing. Others have suggested it could be natural erosion over centuries, maybe particularly hard-hitting raindrop, or a flaw in the stone itself.
I don't know. It just seems so perfectly round.
And that's why the shot on the statue of Lagash remains such a tantalizing enigma. It just doesn't fit neatly into any of our existing categories.
It's like a piece of a puzzle from a completely different box.
Exactly. And it's a piece that continues to fuel the imaginations of those who believe the Sumerians might have possessed knowledge and technologies that have been lost to time.
Okay, so we've got these mysterious origins, a strange mark on a statue, and now we're moving into the realm of myth and legend. Have you ever heard of Oannes?
The Fishman.
Yep, the one who's supposedly emerged from the sea to bring knowledge to humanity.
Oh, yes. Oannes is a fascinating figure in Mesopotamian lore. He was described by the Babylonian priest Berossus, who lived in the 3rd century BC, long after the Sumerians had faded from prominence.
So we're talking about a creature with a head and upper body of a man, but the tail of a fish. It sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel.
It does, doesn't it? And according to Berossus, this amphibious being emerged from the Persian Gulf each day to teach the early inhabitants of Mesopotamia all sorts of valuable knowledge.
Like what kind of knowledge?
Well, writing, mathematics, law, agriculture, architecture, the very foundations of civilization.
Wow. So this fish man was basically a walking, talking encyclopedia.
Essentially. And the texts describe him as a benevolent being, a divine figure who sought to uplift humanity.
But why? What was his motivation?
That's unclear. Some interpret him as a cultural hero, perhaps a real person or group of people who arrived from a distant land, bringing with them advanced knowledge that seemed almost supernatural to the indigenous population.
So maybe it wasn't a literal fish man, but rather a metaphor for the arrival of a more advanced culture.
It's possible, but either way, the myth of Oannes speaks to a fundamental human curiosity. Where does knowledge come from? And is there something beyond ourselves, something greater, that guides our progress?
It's a question that has resonated with humans for millennia, and it's one that we're still grappling with today.
Exactly. And what's even more fascinating is that Oannes wasn't alone. Berossus mentions a whole group of similar beings, the Apkallu, who were also said to have emerged from the sea to guide humanity.
Okay, so now we have a whole school of fishmen bringing knowledge to the world. This is getting even more incredible.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Could these stories be distorted memories of real encounters with people or beings who possess knowledge and abilities that seemed extraordinary to the early Sumerians? Or are they purely symbolic tales, reflecting deeper truths about the nature of knowledge and civilization?
Those are great questions. And they're questions that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the mysteries of ancient Sumer.
So stay tuned. There's much more to uncover.
Okay, so you've got these mysterious origins, a strange mark on a statue, and now fishmen bringing knowledge to humanity. What's next on our Sumerian mystery tour?
Let's dive into the Nippur tablets and the tale of the Great Flood.
Oh, this one is a classic. Almost every culture seems to have a flood myth. What's special about the Sumerian version?
Well, for one thing, it's one of the oldest recorded flood narratives we have, dating back to around the 17th century BC. These tablets, discovered in the ruins of Nippur, a major Sumerian city, tell the story of Zusudra, a pious king who is warned by the god Enki about a coming deluge. Yeah, a massive flood. Enki instructs Zusudra to build a huge boat to save himself, his family, and representatives of all animal species.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's strikingly similar to the later Akkadian epic of Gilgamesh, where the flood hero is Utnapishtim, and of course, the biblical account of Noah's Ark.
The parallels are undeniable, which suggests that the flood story was likely a shared narrative that evolved and spread throughout Mesopotamian cultures, ultimately influencing later traditions like the Hebrew one. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Sumerian version isn't just a tale of divine retribution. It also hints at a deeper understanding of cycles of destruction and renewal.
What do you mean by that?
Well, in the Sumerian version, the flood isn't just a punishment for human wickedness. It's also seen as a necessary cleansing, a way to wipe the slate clean and allow for a new beginning. This idea of cyclical destruction and rebirth is a recurring theme in Sumerian mythology and cosmology.
So are you saying that the Sumerians might have seen the flood not just as a historical event, but as a metaphor for the cyclical nature of life itself?
Precisely. And that's what makes their version of the flood myth so fascinating. It's not just a story of survival. It's a reflection on the very nature of existence, the ebb and flow of creation and destruction, and the possibility of renewal even in the face of overwhelming chaos.
Wow, it's a powerful interpretation. It makes you wonder if the flood myth, in all its variations, is tapping into a primal human fear of the unknown and our desire to find meaning in the face of overwhelming forces.
Absolutely. And it speaks to the power of storytelling to transmit not just historical events, but also profound philosophical ideas about the human condition.
Okay, so we've got these mysterious origins, a strange mark on a statue, a fishman bringing knowledge, and a flood myth that speaks to the cyclical nature of existence. What's our final Sumerian mystery?
For our last stop, we're going vertical. Let's talk about those iconic stepped pyramids that dot the ancient Mesopotamian landscape, the ziggurats.
Ah, the ziggurats.
Hmm.
These monumental structures were clearly important to the Sumerians. We know they served as temples and religious centers, but could they have been more than just places of worship?
That's a question that has intrigued researchers for decades. What if the Sumerians, with their advanced knowledge of mathematics and astronomy, also had an understanding of energy flow that we're only beginning to rediscover?
Wait, are you suggesting that the ziggurats were designed to harness some kind of energy? That's a pretty wild idea.
It might sound far-fetched, but consider this. Many ancient cultures, not just the Sumerians, built structures that seem to align with natural energy fields or incorporate elements that could have generated or manipulated energy. We see it in the pyramids of Egypt, the stone circles of Stonehenge, and the temples of the Maya, among others.
So you're saying there might be a connection between these ancient structures, a shared knowledge of energy that we've lost track of.
That's one possibility. And when you look at the ziggurats, there are some intriguing features that lend credence to this theory. For example, some researchers believe that the ziggurats' stepped design, combined with the materials they were built from, could have created a piezoelectric effect, generating a small electrical charge when subjected to pressure or vibration.
Okay, but how would the Sumerians have harnessed that energy? And what would they have used it for?
Those are the million-dollar questions. We're still trying to piece together the puzzle. Some speculate that the energy could have been used to power lights or other devices, or perhaps it played a role in religious rituals.
It's mind-blowing to think that these ancient structures might have been functioning as giant energy machines.
hmm
But wouldn't we have found some evidence of this, like wiring or other technological components?
It's true that we haven't uncovered any definitive proof, but it's important to remember that our understanding of ancient technology is constantly evolving. What we might dismiss as primitive today could have been cutting-edge science thousands of years ago.
That's a good point. And it's a reminder that we should always approach the past with a sense of humility and an open mind. What we consider impossible today might have been commonplace for the Sumerians.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring these mysteries so exciting. They challenge us to rethink our assumptions about the past and to consider possibilities that might seem outlandish at first glance.
Well, on that note, I think we need to pause for a moment and let all this information sink in. We've covered a lot of ground, from the Sumerians' mysterious origins to the possibility that their ziggurats were harnessing energy in ways we're only beginning to understand.
It is a lot to process, but I think it's safe to say that the Sumerians were a far more complex and innovative civilization than we often give them credit for. And the mysteries they left behind continue to spark our imaginations and drive our quest to understand the past.
Stay tuned, folks, because in part 2 of our Sumerian deep dive, we'll delve even further into these fascinating enigmas, exploring alternative theories and considering the broader implications of these mysteries for our understanding of history, technology, and the human story itself.